I've hit record, so we are good to go, Damien. So after you, my friend.
Right, I'm going to try to remember how we do this. This is all good. Okay, so presumably by that, Ben, you're telling me that everyone can see my screen. Zoom terrifies me, doesn't give me a view as to what people can see.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so we're back in the land of the unicorns. I'm getting text messages through my computer at the same time, which is super helpful. Right, okay. Like I just kind of said there, this is all about things that we are doing with systems into PaperCut. And I'll kind of, hopefully, as we go through, explain why we're doing this. Some of it we've talked about a little bit in the past, but we haven't really had a particularly well-resolved demonstration of it or a video of it. Some of you guys will have already seen some of the stuff we're doing today, but hopefully some of it won't, and so on. But the key piece is really what we're doing to expand upon the PaperCut instances we have out there and building a sales and a commercial story to go and revisit those customers that have PaperCut, that maybe are looking for, contract renewals, lease renewals, device renewals, that kind of stuff, and the changing marketplace. Trying to keep the software that you have in place relevant, and if anything, build more relevance to allow you to carry on and put more benefit, more value into it, using stuff that customers are already familiar with. So just making that story more relevant in the changing world. I spent ages on my agenda slide. You ready, Ben? This one's super exciting.
I'm absolutely excited beyond belief because I know what you're like.
You know, normally I have 4 agenda points, right? Yeah. Wait for this. Oh, hang on. Nothing happened. Wait for it.
Waiting.
Here we go. 3.
Oh, you've gone down to 3 now. Nice work.
Exactly right. I might just change my agenda to a big question mark from now on. Okay, guys, we always talk about why are we doing this, what it's all about, and specifically why are we starting to really bring the PaperCut story back into place. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because, again, a lot of these webinars are building on the same story. We keep wanting to be proved wrong. As yet, nobody kind of has. So we're just going to dive into this. The market still looks like this. In fact, if anything, these numbers are looking worse around paper usage than they were. So more specialist, but that's a story for another time. The bit that we're really interested in is this digitization of paper processes, where this looks like this digitization piece. And we are seeing this in the drop in volume that is going through the devices that our partners are managing, the resellers are actually managing, and also the type of documentation and where this is. And what we've realized is this is actually creating a really major opportunity to talk more about products like PaperCut. And we'll come into why in a moment. So can I give you a few headline kind of little, top line stuff? Again, these are things that we've talked about in other webinars. Please do go and watch some of the stuff or look at some of the presentations. I never do because the sound of my own voice really puts my teeth on edge. So I apologize for you guys having to listen to me. But if you have, you'll know that we put this one up quite a lot. Just as an example, I realize you guys aren't all necessarily from the UK. Looking at some of the names on that list, I think there's a few that are not. But the ICO obviously is our data protection agency. These are the guys that are following up on GDPR requests. Not going to go into GDPR massively, but it is interesting that they have this statistic that 15% of all registered data incidents are through documents that have been emailed or processed to the wrong address or the wrong location. That is more, by far the biggest category of mistakes that they make in data processing is that people have put things in the wrong place. In fact, this is a letter that came home. The date still makes me laugh for anybody who's familiar with GDPR. But from the school that my children attend on the very first day that GDPR came in, and it was to do with scanning documents and putting them in the wrong place, and then causing a data breach out the back of it. And again, these numbers, we've used them over and over, but if we really look at scanning, if we look at where things are, we're talking about 35% of all documents that get filed, save as, dragged out of emails, saved as, moved around, generally processed or used within any kind of manual document, file save as type process. 35% of those are categorized as lost, and that means they're either named incorrectly or they're in the wrong place or both. And if you try a non-professional, or in fact even a professional typist, you're talking about 8% data entry errors. And if you think about that, there's no spell checking that works for file naming or directory naming or anything like that. And because of that, people end up duplicating documents, which that then results in those 15% of ICO enforcements and all the rest of it. So what I'm trying to say here, guys, is you have a lot of customers out there that a long time ago, we sold the dream of print management to. And the argument for that was you are printing pages and those pages are coming out of printers and you don't know where they are and you don't know who's doing it and you don't know whether they're duplicates and you don't know where the data is going and you can't control the costs and so on and so on and so on. Those pages are now not coming out of printers, and they're not going through the kind of controlled scan processes that we need and so on. And so all of that confusion, all of that data risk, all of those problems around uncontrolled content, they're all back. The problem that you solved by giving them PaperCut has returned because they're not printing the documents, but they are still moving them around. So what we want to do is to be able to put some level of control, some level of tool set over the top of these processes to obviously answer those things. If you like those bits of data on the screen, that's the basis to the sales pitch. This is why it's a problem. This is what's going on. And we have a tool that we utilize to do this. And I promise you this will all become relevant in a minute. So I'm just going to do a little elevator. Again, we've got a ton of content out there. The guys at Select Tech would be more than happy to talk to you. If you don't know what Square 9 Global Capture is, give us a call. Square 9 is a really major part of our portfolio now. It's really growing legs for us, but it's effectively, the global capture piece of it at least, is a very powerful workflow design engine. Square 9, anybody who's listened to us knows that 2 decades of experience, based in the East Coast of the US. It's 17,000 or so organizations utilizing it for around 70,000 seats, key OEM agreements, 2 years of development and support time with Select Tech, lots of stuff going on. Do come and have a chat to us about what we can do with this tool. For the guys in the market that understand, this really is our auto store equivalent, but we have lots of commercial benefits and lots of functional benefits to using the system as well. We could fill webinars purely with global capture all on its own, but it starts at a very low commercial price point. It scales through to the sky as the limit, and we can do all sorts of clever things with it. But the most important thing about it is that if a document lands in a workflow, we can control the outcomes, we can control which users validate those things, we can start to really promote the sound understanding for the customer that those documents are not going to be subject to 35% loss and 8% duplication and 15% of being in the wrong place, because they have gone through a workflow. So we have a tool and we can talk about that. But of course, we really want to bring this into relevance. And like we said at the beginning, the point of this presentation today was to talk about how you can grow the story with your PaperCut customers, how we can make PaperCut feel more relevant. So agenda point 2, what have we got for you? Now, the usual thing here, we have a connector. And typically the MFD in my office, because I don't use a lot of print, I don't need a particularly big MFD. The one I've got does not run a client that will show this embedded connector. So I am going to use our Wizzy video, which is also good because this is a video that you can show to customers if you want. Mr. Jones is on the call. He can tell you where to get a copy of this video if you want to. What I don't know is whether the cheesy music that goes with the video will also show.
I was going to say, I really hope it does, but...
Can you hear that or not?
No, we can't hear it. That's You're going to have to go and watch it for yourselves, guys.
True. Okay, so I'm going to do this. So the funny thing is, I can actually hear it, which is making life really difficult. So I'm going to turn the volume down. Okay, so guys, here we go. We've got a PaperCut MF client running on. In fact, this is the emulator, I believe, but logging in with an ID number. But of course, that could be your usual card and stuff. You guys know about PaperCut MF, I figure, or you wouldn't be here. So we're just going to follow this. This was being done by Matt Green. He's going to log in with a number. Okay, and you can see we're going to the scan actions piece, and this is where the first piece of this goes. So we are going into the scan space, but we are using the PaperCut API provided for this. Now, PaperCut have plans to expand the functionality of this API. It's still relatively new. I think that's fair to say, Ben, that we don't have all the functionality in it yet, so we're fairly early in the process. But the embedded connector that we have, or the embedded tool that we have, has the flexibility to scale up as PaperCut increase this API. But at the moment,
sorry, Dave, I was going to say for the moment, we got a link that we can put in the chat, guys. If you do want to learn more about integrated scanning and which platforms it's on from a PaperCut point of view, that link will be able to show you. If you've got any further questions, then just ask.
Okay, cool. But the key difference here, guys, is you'll see that we have two text fields. We can populate those text fields from elements of the logged in user. And in this case, this demo is running an expenses workflow to allow people to use stuff. So I'm just going to run it. And you can see that Matt typed in a value just for real simple stuff and started scanning. At that stage, the advanced action and API sends this into the Square 9 email gateway. And this is the global capture process engine, as you can see. And that document now lands in the workflow. And you'll see from here that this is global capture. So this is the first part of this story. If we were simply just going scan to email with advanced scan actions or scan to folder, I would have lost that document at that point. All I would know is that it was scanned by that user. When we talk more about global capture, we can start talking about validation, template recognition, metadata, reporting, analytics, all of those good things, because the document has landed in a piece of middleware with locked outcomes. First thing you can see there is I can see the document, where it went. I could also look at the history of the document. So I can see exactly what nodes it hit, when it hit stuff, when it went anywhere, and the fact that we have a validation portal as well. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. And I can see the process field, so the information that's come through. And you can see there that we know the user that actually scanned it. We've got the staff member element at the bottom, the expenses total values, and they've been passed straight through the API, straight into global capture. So it's not the same as delivering a document to a watch folder or to an email address to be picked up by global capture. It is actually using the API. It is populating the data through there, and we can leverage the PaperCut login information as well. So some of that. And we have that validation state as well. And this is really important because I might want, and we'll come into this later in the WebEx, I might want to apply a process. I might want to say every document that hits this profile gets validated by a manager and checked. And in this case, we can do that by going to the process actions piece here, and I can say global capture validation. The document will pop up in a portal. There are lots of features in here that are more of a global capture sales pitch, if you like, than a PaperCut embedded connector pitch. So we could do stuff like populate lots of other fields from lists. We could do key-free indexing. We could apply templates to this. We could do table data. We could do just about anything. In this case, you can see just the two simple fields, and the document is going to be released and saved straight to where it was. So the embedded connector at least allows that thing where we can talk to a customer about uncontrolled scanning. It's great that I can scan to email from PaperCut. That's really cool. But what it doesn't do is it then doesn't stop the data issue of a user scanning to their own email address and then having to go open the file, save as, dump in a directory. It doesn't remove the file from their inbox, which means when they can't remember where they put it, they launch the one out of their inbox, duplicating the document. As we've seen, a huge amount of data duplication. Data duplication obviously leads to versioning issues, people sending the wrong copy of the wrong document. We had an example recently in a health environment that is scanning documents in this way, and they had updated the template of actually something quite important. It was a form that manages medication applied during surgery. So this is stuff you might want to get right, but they couldn't find the version of the form because they couldn't remember where they did it. So they routed back through their emails and managed to find a copy of a document that was actually out of date and had the wrong field information on it. So because of that duplication, they were then putting the wrong information on these documents, which would have had a very major bearing should any patients have had a problem on the notes that they had. So something really quite serious there. And it all comes from this uncontrolled dumping things to files and dumping things to email. And again, authenticated scanning from PaperCut is very cool. It means you can dump stuff in home folders and home directories, all very good.
Damien,
But
just leading off from that, sorry, mate, you've got a question which will apply to that. Someone's asked, can we use the device-based scan function in case additional scan features are needed? Or is this we could do that with global capture, right? With Square 9 and the processes that you're talking about. If they want to use
exactly right. We're going to come into this because in a minute I'm going to do the thing where I tell you how great what we've built with the email gateway is, and then I turn my dial up to say it's great, but actually it's great, but okay. So do you know what? Whoever asked the question, thanks very much for asking the awkward question when I'm out of practice, but I'll be back to you. And we will take a move on. So that's the embedded connector. The general gist of this is using authenticated scanning as a starting point. But there is a very definite benefit to dropping documents into a workflow process. But if you are talking to users about scanning, a couple of good reasons to do it. One of the big ones comes at the end of this in the commercial. So we'll go back there. Just cover a little bit of ground on this, by the way. Let's just try and get this. My usual, what stones are you going to look at? Because I don't do much with paper. I'm not going to lie, I don't. My focus is around document capture, process capture, and everything else. So I occasionally need to remind myself. So I did a bit of an exercise last night and tried to work out where scanning still is, because it's kind of easy at the moment. But you know, to sit and think, well, paper's in reduction, people aren't scanning as much, MFD scanning process is not as important. But the reality is it's more important now, because those digital processes, as we saw, digitization, 85% of all of the processes being listed out there according to, is it Quocirca? I've still not got that right. But there is still paper coming into a business. There's still paper coming into an organization, but it's now more important than ever to get rid of it. You can't use the paper process in many, in many environments. Not only can you not use the paper, you have to quarantine the paper. So you need to get rid of this stuff. And digital post rooms, if anyone knows Nick Gill in Selectech, you'll know that Nick's been working a lot on digital post room solutions that can be scaled right the way back to small organizations, right the way up to big ones. But logistics stuff, there is going to be a delivery note. There is going to be contract information for stuff where you have to pick things up, retail processes. People still need to do driveway forms on forecourts and spoilage reports where these things have to be done. If you sit and scratch your head, there's a lot of paper still kicking around there that needs to be there because it's the only viable medium, but it has to be got rid of very quickly. So scanning is now more critical, but at a smaller, more distributed level. So it's kind of important. So that was where we were going to stop. And Ben was completely right, because that would have been the shortest WebEx in history. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you would be quite welcoming of me shutting up at this point. But sadly, I'm not going to.
Yeah, go on. Don't do it. Don't shut up. Keep going.
I'm tired, man. I'm tired.
You've only done 20 minutes. Get on with it. Come on.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So what else? Hey, do you like that? There you go. So we did what, and now we're doing what else. I was going to go with what to, but there we go. Right. So the story we're talking about, scanning is quite important, and we've given you a thing to really start talking about scanning and why you shouldn't just use scanning to email. We have a talk track on that. We'd love to talk to you about it. explain to salespeople, because we've yet to find a customer that doesn't kind of go, oh, yeah, fair point. All right, yeah, there's one. So it's a useful thing. But the general message here is that this is about order in chaos. Yeah. Scanning gives me this ability to dump documents literally everywhere because they're in my email address or a folder. I can't find the one that I want, so I'll just grab the nearest copy I can find. Doesn't mean it's the right one. And that's where a workflow engine happens. It is creating order. Don't dump stuff. I want to know where it is, what it is, where it's file named. I want that to be built on a process, all of those good things. Okay, really important story. So unstructured content versus, or unstructured process versus full process. Exactly the same sales pitch we had when we were talking about print management, guys. You want to know where something's going and to be able to control that it's going there. Okay, so I'm going to stick my whizzy picture of Global Capture back up. Do talk to us about this engine because we can scan into it. Big whoop, very cool. All right. And this is the bit where I get a little bit negative about the scanning because it's quite niche. There are those things out there that are paper that need to be there. But since somebody ate a badly cooked fruit bat and everybody's at the go home, we're not printing as much. Okay, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? We're talking about PaperCut, but the reality is that people aren't printing as much. Where they would have done stuff before, I mean, accounts payable is a really good example of this. A lot of it, documents came in by email. Somebody sat in an office and printed them, did what they needed to do, and then scanned them. In fact, a huge amount of the documentation that we were scanning was actually printed for the purpose of scanning. Weird workflows, and none of us did anything to talk them out of this because, of course, we were getting the benefit of the print, which is lovely. Now, through necessity, they're not printing it. They are struggling on and working out how to use those electronic copies. And that control, the PaperCut release stuff, that's all out the window because there's nothing controlling it. It also means from a reseller benefit, you guys aren't seeing those documents. They're not being printed. They're not touching your systems. So if we start looking at Global Capture, and anybody who knows anything about Global Capture will know that we import documents. So we might import them from that API tool that we have just given the world's fastest demonstration of. But we could also watch an email address or an ERP feed, you know, a data feed from a system or a forms platform or our lovely friends at Folder. We could start to watch that. We could take feeds from just about anywhere. And that's really cool when we're selling the product. But how do I start to really put that control piece in? So the tool is going to put the documents where I want. It's going to take them through those validated steps. It's going to do all that. But how do I make that relevant to the customer I already have? Because, Ben, you are going to love this. This is right up your street.
I'm ready. Oh,
power is nothing without control. Okay. So it's great that I've got my workflow engine. It's great that Selectech can sell you a really cool workflow engine. It's good that we can do all those things, but we've still got that story of control. How am I going to report on it? How am I going to do it? How am I going to make that relevant to my customer that I already have? So from one weird slide to another one, because Ben, we're going to show it. We're going to do something.
God.
Here we go. Something cool. All right, once
more. Pants.
See the pants. Yeah, this is obviously fully practiced. Yeah,
polished and practiced as with all of our webinars.
Yeah, exactly right. I did not make this up on the spot. All right. Okay, guys, this is a workflow. In fact, it's the workflow that I've had pretty pictures of. Can you see it, Ben? Because it doesn't tell me whether you can or can't. All right, cool. So what I've done, all right, is I've done a bit of scanning in this case, and I've dumped some documents. And anybody who understands Global Capture, okay, they will know that as I come into the system, here we go, what's happening for me here, okay, is documents that have been delivered into my system. They have arrived in a validation state. So this is exactly that thing I was talking about, all right? What's gone on here is rather than documents landing up just in a random folder named however, they're actually coming into a control portal. So I'm actually going to click up on these and I'm going to say, well, I actually want to validate those documents. And I promise this will become relevant. Guys, weirdly, this is not a Global Capture demo in the strictest terms. This is us quite merrily just showing a validation thing. And in this case, this is two different workflows. So I can actually say, do you know what? This is a post-stream workflow. And yeah, I don't know who that one is. So cool, that one's gone. This one, my system's a little slow as usual because I'm running the Zoom call and doing this, that, and the other. But that one's to Susan Parks because this is a post room solution. So do you know what? Release that one because we knew who that one was going to. And it's just clicking through and allowing a user to sit there, and I could index other stuff if I want to. So I could say this one's an invoice, and I could choose the, I'm going to unload that one just because I can. And it's going to move through, and you can see that it's pulling documents into a portal. And I could change this with Global Capture. I could do some automatic recognition. I could do various other things if I wanted to. I'm going to name that one correctly. And what the workflow is actually doing is where I've got a controlled or an uncontrolled, recognized or unrecognized. You can see this one has pulled through. This one's been automatically recognized as a document picking list. It's picked out the elements I want from another part of the workflow. It's populated a bunch of stuff from a database. We've done all sorts of clever stuff that you can do with Global Capture. In this case, this would be a picking list that we'd be using in a warehouse. So I'm going to say, do you know what? Yeah, please hold that order because we haven't got some things. So there we go. And my job is done. In fact, I think I've got one more document. So I will index this one away. And I'm going to send that one to Susan Parks. Great. World's shortest demo in terms of Global Capture. And you can see those documents have hit the system. Now, what was particularly interesting about those processes, and they should now all be finished. You see, my task here is done. Very lovely. Now I want to show you a little friend here. Okay, welcome back to PaperCut. Now the embarrassing thing is, after years and years and years of playing with PaperCut, I had to spend quite a lot of time reminding myself how the bloody thing worked, and I'm still not that familiar with it. But we've got plenty of people who are. So let's take a look here at documents that hit the post room. There we go. And what we should see, there we go, filter it through, is I've got two devices here that look like printers, and they are that workflow, that post room workflow. So let's take a look at that. You can see unclassified documents. If you remember, I was saying unknown recipient or a known recipient. And I'm following a workflow. The documents are being released, and I can kind of tell you where those documents actually are. Let's actually show you. Post capture, sorry, let's click on the right file, document output, being named by the user, by unclassified, creating the file names of the right format, all of that stuff that we can do with a workflow, which is all super great. I can now come into this. Let's take a look at the post room classified workflow. And you will know that I did not print anything. I did not do anything from here. But if I come into the job log, you'll see that the job that I just pushed through, it's picked up the user that I was logged in as the validator, so I know who approved that document or whether it's system approved. I can charge it back to an account if I want to, the number of pages included, the file name, and in this case, the comment, I've taken the recipient address and the process ID. So if I wanted to go back to the Global Capture system, I could pull up the process information for the audit trail of that document. And just to show that we were doing it in different ways as well, if I look at the unclassified post, come into the job log, you can see that the ones that I banged through there that I released as unclassified, there's the file names. I've just got the process ID, so I can check exactly what process fields are included. And you'll see here that I did not attribute a cost to those. So we're just using standard billing. The reality is this is PaperCut tracking workflows, the user that used the validation system, the account that I want the different tracks to be worked through because I can use fields to do that, the document name itself, a cost, and any of the metadata that I want to take off of the document. It might be an invoice number, it might be anything else. Let's take another look in terms of the other ones that I used. So we were using the Global Capture workflow process that we have, okay? And we should be able to see from the logistics piece, okay? Let's go and look in our job log. You can see the files that we've pushed through, the user that I was logging into, because that one's hacked out, the account that we pushed it to, the number of pages in the document, and the last one, you can see that it's picked up the order number and annotated it to say that that order was actually held. I've attributed a cost in here as well because Global Capture in this place, if I open this one up, this is a bigger, shinier looking workflow, but you'll see that this workflow is also powering output for print. So I can start to allocate print to that, of course, and I can track the printer itself if I want to, in the normal way within PaperCut. But I've got 2 different strings or 3 different departments running on that particular workflow, and I'll show you why it's doing it in a minute. But if I come into this, you can see that the same document was split into different pages. And in this case, it's just an order number. It's the confirmation pages. They followed a different track and they were allocated against a different user and a different admin account, even though they were triggered by the same document landing up with multiple pages. And I will show you that the documents look like this. It's multiple pages, it's separated in the workflow, the data is going to different places and printing out automatically the bits that we need to, including the labels and various other things. But the really critical piece of this particular global capture workflow is that it's being tracked in PaperCut. We can apply costs, allocations, rules, we've got all of this stuff, and it never once was triggered by clicking print. These workflows are being tracked and used where we could be saying to customers, we're going to process your documents for you directly from an email import. These are not only prints. This is PaperCut being used to manage workflows and costs of workflows where print is not there. And the story is, again, that we now have control. We know that the documents are being picked up from that email address. We know that they are going through a validated process. We can design that process for you with validation, and you can get all of the data that you need to manage that back into the PaperCut platform, which you're already using, you've already got, so it's expanding that understanding. And for you guys in the resellers, I'm going to pose a question to you in terms of this, okay? We can allocate costs, as you can see, for different things. So is there an argument to say, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Customer, if you want to do unstructured scanning and you want to do it with, following the risk, so chuck it in an inbox, hope that people file it correctly, don't give you the 15% risk with the ICO, don't do 35% of duplication or misnaming, don't do any of those good things, then do you know what? Crack on, that's standard function. But if you want to make sure that a document is validated either by a human or a system based on a rule, if you want to make sure that it goes to the right location, extracts the data and is tracked fully with an audit trail that you can follow, why don't we charge you a half a penny for those ones? Because we saved you a bunch of time doing it anyway. And it's maybe a way to deliver some annuity value back into scanning and process control with a really sound sales pitch as to why that's important. And it's more important now than it ever was because you don't have the controls that you applied for the last decade using print management. So it's building relevance, guys. It's saying just because you're not putting it on paper doesn't mean we can't help with those documents. And in the next couple of WebExes that we're going to do over the next week or so, we're actually going to take digital print down that track as well and start talking about virtual MFDs, which is something I'm particularly excited about, Ben, but we're not going to talk too much about it today.
We know you get all excited when we talk about digitizing.
I'm back in the shed, man. I'm back in the shed. It is, I'm having a womb-like moment, like I said. So there we go.
I think it's really relevant though, Damien, what you're talking about there is because, like you say, there is unfortunately that elephant in the room where people aren't printing as much because they're not in the office. They may be elsewhere. Our friend COVID's been helping a lot with that. And there's a lot of people, a lot of products that we're seeing are starting to turn around to the fact. I mean, even looking at something like PaperCut and the new launch of their product, they're dedicating it towards certain aspects of businesses and certain sizes of businesses because there is opportunities out there and being able to go on.
I think, if we look at what's going on in the category, I think large scale opportunities, large scale organizations where there are proper IT strategies, they kind of look at a network and go, right, what does a network need to do? Well, I need to use desktop services, I need security, I need print. It's part of what a network does. So it's less how important is it, but do you know what? It's a core function. So we need printers, we need print management. So just bolt that into the design and the strategy.
Well, exactly. What you're talking about there is not getting rid of print at all. It's just about adapting to the situation that we're currently in, managing that. And like you say, there is revenue to be made there. Like you say, if you want to put a managed scan process in place, then why not offer the customer to be charged for it?
I'd say,
it's only fair that you're managing that paper, you're managing you're managing that document, you're managing that all the way through the process. It should be a charged for service. And if that's going to give the guys another revenue stream to start talking to customers about, then albeit.
Well, from that perspective, yeah. I mean, I think where this became interesting for me is if I stopped thinking, if I took PaperCut and I took the print management tool off of the heading of it and really thought about what is this? Well, it's a process management tool with some user control, cost allocation, that kind of stuff. And if I just extend the functionality of that PaperCut instance to be able to control outcomes, so control where the documents go to, and if I remove the need for it to only be print engines that are reporting, PaperCut suddenly becomes a management tool that allows me to report and track and control document processes. The paper becomes vaguely irrelevant. And suddenly this tool that these customers have got really suits the problems that they still have.
Absolutely.
In exactly the way they always did,
And this is open to anyone that has PaperCut. So
or
anyone,
even the people that don't.
Well, yeah, exactly. Another string to the bow to talk to people about PaperCut or whatever it may be.
I think the thing is, we have been trying to talk to people about buying global capture and implementing processes. But how does, there's a lot of resellers out there with a lot of customers. And unfortunately, when the customers think about them, they go, oh, they're the photocopier guys. Yeah, we don't need a photocopier, so we're not going to phone those guys. But actually, if you get rid of that and you are talking about a management tool that deals with documents, you already have a really cool one, and it's really well supported, and it's already paid for, and it's on the network, and your users are already in it, and it does stuff. So there's a bunch of things. Anyway,
changing the way of thinking, mate.
Yeah, just take the category off of the product and allow it to be a product. So, guys, the Magnificent 7 questions. Lee can share this with you. These are different stuff. These are just my take on it. But it's, again, when we were talking about document management, it always was very specific. It was accounts payable, how many invoices, what purchase orders, la, 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 la. That stuff is gone. It's every process now. So really lift that up, make it much more generic questions. How do I deal with the process? Which was just what we used to do with print management. It was everything that came out of a printer. Well, now this is every document that moves around a business. So you can do that, So I'm not going to dwell on them, but we've got a ton of these different things. And anyone who's had to sit through me and Ben waffling on from the shed before, will have seen some of this stuff. So please do come back. And we try and throw some more silly pictures into every one of these WebExes, but we've been through a lot of this stuff before. So please ask, and we will happily take you through the different categories of documents, the things that we found, the retention policies, the data. There's just tons of it. If you get yourself a coffee, sit there for half an hour, you could think of 10 different things you could ask a customer that they are just.
We're happy to have these conversations with you guys directly. Do you know what I mean? If you want a session, the shizzle. If you want a session with just even to bring some light into a dark day, because that's obviously what we're bringing is comedic value to processes. But yeah, if you want to set up a session for you and your teams, if you think this is something that could be interesting, you need to sell it to the CEO, you need to sell it to the boss man, whatever it may be, then do get in touch with us, because we will be happy to perform for you. What's the shizzle, Damo?
The shizzle is probably where you want to stop the video.
Yeah, that's where we're going to stop it. Right, just for the purposes of the video, guys, we're going to stop it here, but we are talking commercials as of this point. If you guys do want to hear any more when it comes to commercials, if you're watching this as a recording, then do get in touch with your account manager or someone at Select Tech.